No, okay, fine. So in that case, we reached the conclusion or the climax of our session, and that is Nick giving us a resume, a roundup of the day, which is even more challenging than any previous year, which has always been difficult. I normally see him gathering data as he goes, but I've not seen him at all until this moment. So he tells me he's willing to if he can be heard. So first of all, can you be heard?
Testing 1, 2, 3.
4, 5, 6. We're in business. To you.
Fantastic, and thank you ever so much, everyone. I think images are really, really powerful, and there's a number that certainly resonated right across the day. So the one, I think, probably because of the time that we're living through at the moment around social connectedness, so use of front gardens rather than back gardens seems so obvious, and as I say, certainly of the moment, definitely a kind of a move from segregation to connection, and how important it is that everyone plays a part within that. Older people are no less variable than not old people when it comes to their abilities, their needs and their choices, and we ought to absolutely remember that, and that certainly came through strongly in that last session. And probably the most shocking statistic, I think, collated today, health bodies make life and death decisions on only 16% of the available data. So that's a truly shocking statistic, and again another kind of stick or another element to go behind the message in terms of why Neighbourhood of the Future should be something that everyone considers. I suppose kind of what we ought to also think about, there is a very strong appetite by a lot of certainly every speaker here and through the questions and everything that came through. So we've got that appetite. I think we also have to be kind of honest with ourselves that when we talk about standards, we're not all going to get things exactly as we would want it. So if we've got the appetite and the kind of vision to move towards a set of standards, let's not be hung up right now on the end picture. Let's absolutely have that goal, that vision set out in front of us, but a bit of flexibility around what positions will work for each and every one of us. I do want to just say a massive thank you. Over 170 different messages, questions, sharing of information through the Teams platform. So that's a real difference in terms of what we had last year. So a massive thank you there. A massive thank you to Shirley Ayres and Richard Blythe, who have been fantastic supporting in the external world around social media. That's been lit a light today, which has been fantastic. And then finally, a massive thank you to Nell, who's been an absolute diamond working in the engine room today, and also of course to Ian for taking the time, the energy and the everlasting passion to continue with this. So thank you, and back to you.
Thanks a lot, Nick, and thank you very much, because you've probably been at it non-stop to be able to conjure that up. I was reminded, and I should have thought earlier, but actually Sarah Haywood prompted me to think of Professor Heinz Wolff, who up until last year attended each and every one of our events and any other time that we wanted him. For those of you who ever heard him speak or who came in contact with him, he was the most aspirational person you could possibly imagine, especially in this space. And Sarah was reminded because of what she heard about love, what Bill was talking about, because Heinz was the original TV science. He was Mr. Science on television before my time even. And he was a scientist in, he worked with rockets, and there's a Heinz Wolff building at Brunel University. So real technology, but he consistently reminded us, do not lose sight of the human touch. It's about humanity. Technology does no more than enable. And one of the big analogies that I loved that he offered was, don't get too hung up on this thing about technology, especially robots, because once upon a time when he was a young man and he had a wife, his wife was afraid of the washing machine because she thought it would be so disruptive in their lives, you would never have anything to do. And he said, all it's going to do is enable you so you can spend more time doing the things you want to do. And that's really an important consideration at a technological level, but also at a human level. You know, let's not get too hung up on the fear of the unknown. And I think that that's something that's come to me loud and clear from today. Having researchers with a similar mindset in the equation, researchers who are actually about impact, who are very committed to applied research and open to collaboration within the wider context of defining what best practice is. I think we can actually get there. It's a slow process. It's not going to happen overnight, but I think we have a great opportunity to make it happen. And that's reflected by the fact that we still have 150 odd people around at this time, and started off with 600, and we've been at it for over 8 hours. So I'm going to turn now to Nell. I did it out of sequence, but I thought it was appropriate to kind of summarize what the plans are from an ISO, from a standards perspective. And Nell, if you are still standing or sitting, as the case may be for this, please come forth.
Yeah, luckily been standing. That would have been a bit too long for me. I had one slide to just show what the next steps are, so it just puts it in a visual perspective. Thank you very much. So as I said in the beginning of my talk, this is only the beginning. This was the first step to actually get this.
Nell, you're on mute.
So I was off mute and I muted myself again. Excellent. So thank you for the slide. So I'll start again. So as I said in the beginning of the talk, this was just the beginning of the journey. So what we will be doing is we're going to be gathering all the information from the speakers today, from the chat box, but also from the wider community, because we hope that you'll be talking with your colleagues, with your wider network about this event and what you've maybe learned, maybe not learned, and then also trying to answer those questions that we have asked in the survey. And all of that information will go forward together with existing papers that exist and existing research into a volunteer group. And this is where you could come in as well. So there's a number of ways of how you can get involved going forward. So this is definitely not the end for you, and with those 150 people still on the line. You can volunteer to take part in actually developing the proposal for this international standard. Contact the info@agileaging.org if you're interested, but we will also be following up after the event. So if you've signed up, you will get an email to say the next steps of how you could get involved. So once we've done that work with developing the proposal, it of course has to go to the UK Technical Committee for their approval. If that all goes well, we will go to the international community, so the Aging Societies Committee, for their approval. And if that goes well, we will start the 3-year process of actually getting the consensus of all the different stakeholders in all the different countries. And at the end of the day, have a new standard in place that everybody can use. So that's a summary of me, what's going to be happening next. I don't know if Ian wants to add anything else to this.
I need to say that it's been quite a surreal experience for me, because when I first heard from Nell, January must have been the 6th, I was in intensive care in the Royal London Hospital with what, in hindsight, was probably COVID-19 very early. And so I received this email, well, it was a LinkedIn request to have a conversation, and it did inform me, as we discussed yesterday, a touch of serendipity. So when we finally spoke a couple of weeks later, and Nell explained her thinking, at first it sounded like a very tall order, and it still does sound like a tall order. You know, it's a very big subject, huge amount of work's gone into it already from everybody who's involved here. But I think the point is that we have an opportunity to inform the future. And that's what I like, because actually to work collectively towards a clear aim and cross borders could create something quite special. I just got a sense of that, and I wish to thank everybody who has participated today. Absolutely fantastic. I've got to thank the team at Microsoft. They worked across the weekend on this. For those of you that tried the rehearsal on Thursday, you will know how challenging it's been. They had to do a workaround. Kishore and the whole team, George, Natasha, everybody who's been involved, and people who I don't even know, because I think there's been about 8 or 9 different technicians making sure that this held up. I think that covers it all. Thank you to ISO. Thank you once again to Nick for your involvement. Thank you all the speakers who are still, many of you online. I doubt very much if we still have China on board, because that would now be right in the middle of the night, but we had people getting up at 4:30. So without further ado, I'm going to let you all have a nice drink. I'd love to have one with you, but it ain't going to happen tonight. So I guess I shall just press the goodbye button. It seems a shame, but there you go. Au revoir. Till next time. Thank you.